The purpose of this video is not to tell you whether or not you should believe Semper Virgo. There are plenty of videos like that on the internet. Just go and search for them and, you know, find a video that agrees with what you already believe, right? Confirmation bias, yes. The purpose of this video instead is to confront a few problematic ways that Semper Virgo has been argued by some in the past. Let's get into it. Semper Virgo, for those who are not familiar with the term, means forever a virgin or continually, perpetually a virgin. This is the belief that Mary, even after giving birth to Jesus, remained separate from her husband, Joseph, that she didn't consummate that marriage. Now, the biggest problem straight off the bat with this argument that seems to happen fairly regularly is treating it as something that has a primary bearing on salvation, as though if you believed or denied Semper Virgo, then this means you were or you weren't a Christian. The reality is that whether or not Mary knew Joseph after she gave birth to Jesus has no bearing whatsoever on your salvation. The prophecy in the Old Testament said that Mary would be a virgin when she gave birth to Jesus, but it doesn't say anything about her life with her husband after that fact. It has no bearing whatsoever on your salvation. That being said, people will still argue about this in the pursuit of truth, which I think is a good thing. The problem is that some of the arguments are unnecessary. Some of them try to prove things that are not primary issues. So, for example, somebody who argues against Semper Virgo, they will use passages like the one that says that Joseph didn't know Mary until she gave birth to Jesus. And they'll say, well, you see this word, this Greek word, eos, until, means that she knew Joseph after she gave birth to Jesus. Not necessarily. And then plenty of people will bring up the grammatical syntaxes of this and all, and they will explain, well, this doesn't necessarily mean that Mary knew Joseph after the fact. So that one, it doesn't definitively say, Joseph and Mary consummated their marriage. That's fine. Put that to the side. The other passages that are often brought up to reject Semper Virgo are the passages that talk about Jesus's brother or Jesus's brothers and sisters. Now, the people talking about these passages who are defending Semper Virgo will say, well, look, this word to refer to Jesus's brothers and sisters, it could mean cousins, which it could. I mean, there's other Greek words for cousins, but they'll also argue, well, this could mean Jesus's half-brothers and sisters. There's often this belief that Joseph, because he's not mentioned in Jesus's adult life, that he was probably older when he married Mary, when he was betrothed to Mary, which is why, maybe he died before Jesus turned 30 or so, which is why he's not mentioned, but that he brought children with him from his previous marriage. And that these children were, the sons or were the brothers and sisters that are referred to Jesus' brothers and sisters, his half brothers and sisters. I mean, it's perfectly plausible to refer to your half brother, your half sister as your brother, or your sister. That's fine. And then people will get into the weeds of these two sections, either the ones that talk about Jesus' brothers and sisters, or this Greek word eos, that Joseph didn't know Mary until, she gave birth. And they miss the point entirely. You see, if you're going to deny Semper Virgo, you don't have to prove that there are any other sons and daughters of Mary after Jesus. You don't. God opens and closes the womb. It could very well be that Mary and Joseph had a normal marriage and consummated that marriage and were one flesh, but that God didn't grant any subsequent children to Mary after the fact. That could very well be the case. Not every consummation results in conception. And that's perfectly fine. You do not have to prove, if you are arguing against Semper Virgo, you do not have to prove that there were other children born from Mary after the fact. On the other hand, the one who is arguing in favor of Semper Virgo, this is the person who has the burden of proof. Because what they are claiming is that Mary and Joseph had a marriage contrary to every prescription of marriage in Scripture. God says, husband or a man shall leave his family and marry his wife, and the two shall become one flesh, right? ... except for Mary and Joseph. Or in the epistles, I believe Paul talks about that husband and wife may refrain from the conjugal act for a period of time for prayer and fasting, but then must, get back together. So the person claiming Semper Virgo, they have to demonstrate somehow that Mary and Joseph were exempt in a special case apart from these commands, apart from God's description of marriage, that Mary and Joseph had a marriage that had no consummation, that they were not a one flesh union, that they did not separate for a time and then come back together, that all of this happened. The burden of proof is actually on the person claiming Semper Virgo, not on the person denying it. Now, if you're a Roman Catholic, this is a really easy problem to solve. All you have to do is say, well, what's the dogma according to the magisterium or according to the papacy? Well, it says that Mary was perpetually virgin, therefore she was, right? But if you're a Lutheran, for example, and you really love that Luther quote where he says, here I stand, unless I'm convinced by what was it? Scripture and plain reason, I cannot and will not recant and go against conscience. If this is your, one of your favorite sort of positions that Luther takes, and that he demands the source of a belief before he believes it, then for you to say, well, I believe in Semper Virgo because Luther believed in Semper Virgo and these other church fathers believed in Semper Virgo, that doesn't cut the mustard, buddy. It doesn't. For you to just say, well, these other people believed it, therefore I'm going to believe it. They could be right or they could be wrong, but what you should be searching for is the source of their belief. Remember, the church fathers argued regularly from Scripture. They would say, look, this is why I came to the conclusion, and they would show the reason behind this, or they would show the Scripture behind this. Now, if you're going to be consistent as a Lutheran, that's a pretty good standard to hold to say, well, just as the church fathers said, the Bible, Scripture, is the ultimate umpire. It may not be the only source of information. What if, for example, Clement of Rome knew Mary and asked Mary herself, said, Mary, did you remain, celibate even after Jesus was born? And Mary said yes, and Clement wrote down, yeah, Mary said she remained celibate. That could be very valid as well. But the point is that you have to find the source of the doctrine. It is not enough simply to say, so-and-so believed this thing, therefore it is true. But you have to find the source of the doctrine. Why did the church fathers believe it? Why did Luther believe it? Why do you believe it? That is what has to be demonstrated if you want others to believe Semper Virgo as well. You have to show the source of the belief. It has to be a convincing and compelling, authoritative source. That is what you need to present. And as for you denying Semper Virgo, all you have to do is say, I need to be presented with evidence behind this claim. I need to be presented. I need to be presented with a source for this belief. You need to show me why God's command of Scripture to all of the husbands and wives in Scripture does not apply to Mary and Joseph. Why this picture of Christ and the church is not represented in this holy family of Mary and Joseph. You are saying that these people did something completely contrary to every other marriage, to all of these other commands for marriage in Scripture. You're saying that this goes against all of these other commands in Scripture. You have to show me why this is different, why this is a different case, why I should believe this one thing is extraordinary and contrary to what we already have in Scripture. The burden of proof is on the person claiming Semper Virgo. You have to show your sources. You have to show why this thing is different from every other marriage in Scripture. So those who deny Semper Virgo, do not be waylaid into believing that it's on you to prove that Jesus had brothers and sisters who were subsequently born from Mary. That's not necessary to be proven. Instead, you need to stand your ground and insist that you are shown the source of this doctrine. Those of you who believe in Semper Virgo, you need to investigate why this belief came up in the first place. And those people who deny Semper Virgo, don't just call them heretics because this doesn't affect their salvation. Now, if there is a clear biblical scriptural something that shows, this is absolutely taught in Scripture, then those who deny Scripture, that's a different story altogether. But to simply say, you deny this belief about Semper Virgo, you're going to hell, That's not how it goes, buddy. Anyways, I hope that this helped you to argue, not that this gave you an answer one way or the other, but that this challenges you to look more to Scripture, to your sources, to the church fathers and their reasons for believing in Semper Virgo. God bless and take care.